So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part for the project, which is the note taking application. So for that we need to use the script.js file. Now instead of that, first we need to get the reference to these particular element, which is the add note, and also the reference of this main element. Now before starting the code inside the JavaScript, first I'm going to come back to the style.css. I'm going to just simply selecting this note one, which is the note division, because we want to add this note division like dynamically. So I'm going to comment it out, these particular things. Okay, this is the note division. So I have actually commented out. Right now, if I control save it, you can see we are just having only one element present, that is this particular add note, which is the button, and also this main one. So we need to get the reference of these two ones inside the script.js. So we are going to use the query selector and initializing it inside the variable. So first is the add btn. So I'm going to name my variable as add btn, then document.query selector. Now it is actually a query selector, so we need to specify the type of the selector as well by adding the hash symbol and also the add btn, the name of the id selector. Alright, then I'm going to duplicate this particular code by pressing the shift alt and down arrow key. And after that, here it is actually a main container, which is the main division. So I'm going to change it to main. Alright, and if I control save it, you can see we have these reference of these particular element inside these particular variables. Then after that, we need to set the listener to the button, which is the button, because whenever we click on this button, we want to display a note. If I click it here, then you can see then there is a new sticker added to the web browser. So that is what we want to achieve. So add event listener. So we want to listen to the click event. So on click of the button, we want to add the listener. After that, we need to specify the comma, and here we need to specify the add note, which is the callback that we want to create. Alright, so first is the click, then second is the add note. We have added the listener to the button, so here we need to use a function, then add note, and then to start its block of the code. After that, we need another function, which is a function which is actually for the save note. Okay, then we need to use the save note function. Alright, and then we need another function to actually load the note from the local storage of the browser. So these are the three functions that are required. So first we need to create these note sticker dynamically by using the JavaScript. So for that we need to create the code, means with that we need to add the code inside the add note function. So we want to create a node, so I'm going to create the constant of the node, then we need to initialize it. So we need to first here use the document, that is this one, document dot create element. So we want to create the element, so we want to create the division element. Alright, remember the structure of the code, we actually having a division, and then these are the things that we need to create. Alright, so coming back to the script.js again, after creating the variable of the division, which is a note, then with the use of this particular note variable, we need to add the class. So we are going to add the class by using the class list, and we want to add a note class list. So coming back to, you can see here we have a class note, so we want to add the class which is actually a note. So here I'm going to specify the note. Alright, then to terminate that particular code, after that we need to update its inner HTML. So inner HTML, inside of that we need to use the template string so that I can split the code into multiple lines. Alright, so this is this template string, which is a key present at the top of your tab key and also at the bottom of the escape key. Inside of that, we need to actually create the HTML structure, that is this particular HTML structure. So I'm going to copy this particular HTML structure, which is the division tag, and after that we need a text area, and inside of the division under the class tool we have these particular I tags, which is the font awesome tags. So we need to just simply copy these lines of the code, and coming back to the HTML part, means the script.js part, here we need to paste it. Then I'm going to format this particular one in a proper way. So the text area part is not actually copied, so we also want a text area. Coming back to the script.js again, after the end of the division we need to paste the text area code as well. Okay, so this is what we have now done with the template string. After creating the note, then we need to get the reference of these particular ones inside the variables. Alright, these are the three elements. The first is a save icon, the second is a trash icon, then also a text area. So with the use of this note variable, we need to get the reference of these one inside the variables. So here we're going to create the const, and the first is the trash icon equal to, then we need to use the node dot query selector, because we need to actually specify the type of this selector as well. So here it is actually a class selector, so we need to specify the dot and also the trash. Alright, now we need to add this class name inside this particular one, because these are the class names of the font awesome for the styling of the tags, so that we can get these tags. So these are the names used by the font awesome, but we need to actually provide our own name of the class so that we can use it and apply the code. So for that, here we need to use the trash. So trash, this will be the name for the trash icon, and then here we need to use the save. This will be the name for the save icon, which is the class name. Then I'm going to duplicate this code into multiple times. Then this will be our save icon, and here we need to provide the class name as save, you can see. And then we need to use the text area, which is the text area tag, and here we need to specify the text area because it is actually a tag, so we just need to only specify the name of the tag. Now we have the reference of these all three elements inside these particular variables. So now we can set the listeners to these particular variables. Alright, so here we need to first set the trash icon. So trash icon add event listener. Inside of that, we need to listen to the click. So whenever we click on the trash icon, we want to remove the note. So here I will be using the arrow function, which is an anonymous function, that function without any name. So it will be like arrow function. Actually here we need to add the arrow. This is the arrow function. Okay, and inside of the arrow function, we need to just simply use the note dot remove, that is this particular function. Alright, and then we need to call the save note. So whenever we remove the notes, we need to call the save notes function. Right now it is not going to do anything because we have not specified any code inside the save note function. Alright, so this is the code for the trash icon. Then whenever we enter any data inside the text area, we want to actually call the save note function. Alright, and also whenever we click on the save function, means the save icon, we want to save the data of the node. So here we need to use the save icon dot add event listener, add event listener. Instead of that, we need to listen to the click listener, and here we need to call the save note function, is the callback. And then inside the text area, that is this one, we want to listen to the input of the text area, because we don't want to click on it, we want to listen to the input of the text area, and then we need to call the save note function again. Alright, now it's time to specify the code inside the save note function. But before that, whatever we have done inside this particular one, we need to append it to the main, that is this one. Alright, so here we need to use the main dot append child, that is this one, append child. Instead of that, we need to pass the node, because at the end we want to attach the node to the main container, and that is done with this particular line of the code. If I control save it, and if I click on button, you can see we get the node. Now if I click on trash icon, you can see we are able to remove the node. But if I just enter some data here, and if I refresh it, you can see the node is also refreshed, and also the data of the text is washed out, because we have not added the code for the save note function. So coming back to the script.js, now it's time to specify the code inside this particular save note function. So here I'm going to create the variable of the nodes, because we want to store the nodes. So it is actually a nodes, that is a one, document.get element by id, or I can use here a query selector all, because we want to select all the nodes. That is the reason we have actually named the variable as nodes, and I'm going to use the query selector, because if there is more than one nodes, then we want to select all of them. So that is the reason of class by using the node. So that is why I have used here a query selector all, and under that node we have the text area. So we want to select all the text area. Okay, so that will be referenced, will all of these reference, means all of the reference of this particular text area will be stored inside this nodes variable, which is a type of constant variable. Then we need to use the const data, and it is actually of type array. Alright, so we are going to define an array of type data. Now I have pressed the Ctrl S, that is the reason everything is actually refreshed, because we are actually using the live server extension. That is the reason the things is actually changed inside the browser. Now we want to loop through all the nodes and we want to push those nodes values inside the local storage of the browser by using the push function of the array. So for that I will be using here a loop, which is the traditional for loop. So here is the for loop, and instead of the for loop I will be using the let I is equal to 0. Okay, and after that we need to use the I is smaller than according to the lengths of the nodes. So nodes dot length, we want to run this particular loop according to the length of the available nodes. Then we need to increment the counter. Alright, and after that inside of that we need to use the data, because we want to post the content inside the data array. So we want to push it by using the push function of the array. Alright, now the things according to the values, like nodes means the value according to the, so if there is a 0, suppose we have like these two nodes, so this is actually present at the 0th index, this is actually present at the 1 index. First the content of this particular text area means this particular node will be pushed to this array when the value of the counter is actually 0, because right now it's going to run only for the 2 times, for the 0 and the another way is actually for the 1. Okay, then in the second index it's going to add the data. Right, so this is how the loop will be works here. According to the value of this particular I, it's going to push the data inside this particular array. Alright, and here after that we need to actually push what we want to push the value. We don't want the tag, we want to push the value of the text area, which is actually a reference stored inside the node. Actually I press the Ctrl S inside the browser because my cursor inside the browser. So after adding the code, I have actually pressed the Ctrl S again. That is the reason everything is actually washed out from the browser window. After adding this particular for loop, we want to store this particular data inside the local storage as well. So for that we need to use the data. So if the length of the data is actually equals to 0, so first we need to add the condition. If it is equal to 0, then we want to actually perform the if block. So we want to remove everything from the local storage. So first we need to select the local storage, remove items means the length of the nodes means the array is actually empty. Now this particular array is actually denoting the data inside the local storage of the browser, means if the data is 0, the length of the array is 0, it means there is nothing inside the nodes. So that is the reason we want to remove the local storage as well. So local storage, remove item, and here we need to remove what? We want to remove the nodes key. Okay, this is actually the nodes key that we want to remove. Then we need to perform the else block. Inside of the else, we want to use the local storage again. Local storage, we want to set the item. So what we want to set? We want to set the nodes. So here we want to set the nodes, and we want to set these particular nodes inside the JSON format by using the stringify, means creating the JSON in a form of string, so that it will become easy for us to actually get the data once we are actually starting the code inside the load node function. So you can see now we are able to save the data inside the browser. So if I refresh it, if I enter here some data, and if I just refresh it, you can see now the web page means the node is not present here, but the data will be saved inside the browser storage. Now if I press the F12 key and I come back to the local storage, at the port number, you can see that thing that I have added here is actually presented. Now if I can here delete it, and if I again click it here, we get the node sticker. So this is, you can see as soon as I enter the data, it's actually updated inside the browser storage as well, because we are actually listening to the input listener of the text area. Control save it. Now the page is refreshed, and we also not able to see the UI part of the node, but we are actually able to save the data inside the local storage of the browser in a form of JSON. You can see here it is actually stored in a form of JSON. Now it's time to start the code inside the load node. So I'm going to close this particular console window like this one, because I want to start the code inside the load function. Once we are done with it, Then we are going to test the entire application again. Inside of the load node function, we want to load the node. So first we need to here create the variable, which is actually ls nodes, which is short for the load nodes. Then we need to actually parse the data. So that is the reason we have actually converted the code, means we save the node in the form of JSON. So we can call the json.parse function. So we want to parse the local storage of the browser. So here we need to use the local storage dot. So we want to get the item. So here we actually set the item to the local storage. Now we need to get the data from the local storage. So for that we have the get item function. Inside of the get item function, we need to specify the key. So we want the nodes because we are setting the data in a form of nodes key. So remember, both of these key names should be same. Otherwise you will face some issues. So once we are getting the reference of the local storage in this particular nodes variable, that is the ls nodes, after that we need to here check for the condition. So if ls nodes is not equal to null, right, if not equal to null, then we want to perform the ls nodes for each. So here I will be using the for each, that is this one, for looping the things. So it has a one counter, then there is the anonymous callback. So here I will be using the note text. If you know the for each loop, this is the for each, and inside of that we need to start the block of the code. So I have actually started the wrong block of the code. Inside of that we need to start the block of the code. Now we are actually not getting any error. Instead of that we need to call the add node function because we want to add the node which is actually the UI part of the node. That is the reason. Now if I control save it, and now if I enter here some data which is ftm, now if I refresh it, you can see still it is not actually doing anything because we need to call this particular load node function. So here we need to use the load. So it is actually a load nodes function because we are actually loading multiple nodes. So here we need to call this function. That is the reason nothing is actually happening. So I have actually changed the name of the function. Now we actually call the load node function. Now if I control save it, you will see nothing because we need to specify more code inside this particular load nodes function. Alright, so this is the if condition. Under the if condition, we are actually calling the add node function. And also after calling the add node function, we need to set the values inside these particular nodes. Okay, so what we want to do here, we need to create some variables which is nodes is equal to, and then here we need to use the document, that is this one, document dot query selector all, and inside of that we need to specify like load dot node and text area. So this particular node is actually denoting these conditions, that is the condition for this node because the variable, remember this is actually the node. So the same condition, because under the node we have the text area, so we want to display the UI part. So that is the reason we actually getting the reference of the node and the text area as well. And after that we need to here use the constant which is for the last node. So for that we need to add here a logic a little bit like this nodes, which is the array, because we are getting everything in a form of array, means this is actually treated as an array because there are multiple like nodes, like more than 1 and 2, so those will be treated as an array. So that is the reason we are actually here using the array notation. And then we need to use the nodes dot length minus 1, so that we are actually getting everything at the perfect position. So what I mean here, if I enter here first, then this will be the second, and if I refresh it, so whenever we actually load the nodes from the local storage, then we are getting these particular nodes in a proper order. So that thing will be achieved by using this particular condition. Alright, after that we need to actually use this last node value, which is the dot value is equal to node text, because the text that is actually presented inside this particular looping element, because we are actually looping by using the for each. So the text will be present inside this particular node text, and then we are actually setting it with the use of these particular logics. Alright, now if I control save it, and once if condition is executed, then we want to execute the else block. So here we need to specify the else block. Instead of that we need to again call the add node. If there is nothing present inside the local storage, then still we want to display a blank node. If I control save it and if I refresh it, you can see there is things are actually not working. But if I actually add here add node function, means click on the add node button, if I enter your data and now if I refresh it, we are not able to see the nodes. So there is there is some problem here. If I actually increase the size of the windows, if I press the F12 key here, if I come back to console, so here we're actually getting some error like type error, ls.node function is not defined. So why we're actually getting error here, ls.node, so we're actually getting the error. Okay, so here I made a typo, it is like for each, not for ag. If I control save it and now if I actually come back to the browser, you can see now our code is working because this data is actually stored inside the local storage of the browser. If I press the F12 key here and if I just simply go to here like application under the local storage, you can see here we are actually getting the data. If I just remove it and call it as first, you can see it's actually instantly updated. Now if I refresh it, you can see it's actually still present. If I add another node, you can see that is actually also added inside the browser. Alright, now if I remove this particular line of the code, like if I comment it out and if I now refresh it, you can see we are facing some issues because we are not able to add the nodes in a proper way. So that is the reason this particular logic is actually very important. And how I ended up with this particular idea, I just experimented a lot with this particular project. Alright, and when I refresh the page, then we are able to see the blank node. If I don't call the add node function here, control save it. So if I just simply first remove every node, or if I refresh it, then you can see there is no blank node is appearing, which is the default behavior of this particular application. If I remove everything, then still we are getting this particular blank node. So this is because we actually need to call this add node function in the else block of the load nodes. If there is nothing is present inside the local storage, then still we want to display a one node UI, an empty node, so that a user can enter the data. Okay, so that's it for this particular project, which is a note taking application. So if you like this module, then please leave your review. Your review motivates me to create more awesome content like this. So thank you for watching and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.